Welcome back to a new seasons of the Entrepreneur's Chair that I'm thrilled to be hosting here on LinkedIn. Throughout this series, my goal is to provide authentic and intimate conversation with trailblazing leaders who are reshaping the Austin landscape. From startup founders to seasoned business moguls, we'll dive deep into their triumphs, challenges, and pivotal moments that have shaped their entrepreneurial journey. Today, I am so honored to have with me Jean-Ann Booth. She's a serial entrepreneur with over 30 years experience in technology, having founded and sold companies to Apple, Texas Instruments. She co-founded Intrinsity, which developed the graphics chip for the Apple iPad, and Luminary Micro, the first to market with ARM Cortex M3 microcontrollers, later acquired by Texas Instruments in one of 2009's top VC-backed deals. Inspired by her mother's aging journey, Booth founded UnaliWear to create the Kanega Watch, the first medical alert smartwatch with built-in fall detection and 24/7 emergency response. Unlike traditional systems, it's voice-activated, waterproof, never needs removal for charging, and designed for discreet, stylish protection. Booth's mother served as UnaliWear's first senior experience officer, I love that, ensuring real-world usability. With a BSEE from UT Austin and MSCE from National Technical University, Booth continues to redefine medical wearables, empowering aging adults with independence and safety. Welcome, Jean-Ann.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure being here.
Well, we've known each other a long time,
Yes.
And I would say you are a stalwart of the entrepreneurial world. I mean, your experiences, and I'm really happy that you're willing to come here and share it with us today.
Oh, thanks.
So your background, your experience, I mean, you have gone through different industries, deep knowledge in semiconductor, now you've gone to medical wearables. What inspired you to pivot just to move into the wearable space?
You know, the truth of the matter is I didn't actually pivot because after the last of the semiconductor companies sold, that was the one that sold to Texas Instruments, I actually retired and I was a dive master on a liveaboard scuba diving boat. So that was the first pivot. That lasted about 3 years until my mom turned 80, which drove the pivot to create UnaliWear for and with my mom.
That's wonderful.
Yep.
Yeah, and we could go all day with our shared experience with diving.
Yeah.
But we're glad that the 3 years ended and you jumped back in, giving the world the Kanega Watch. And it really was born from that personal experience with your mom, right? So
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about how your mom's feedback shaped the product and how your product stands out from other medical alert systems. And also, I want to hear, it's an award-winning product. So
It is.
I want to hear about that too. So please.
So I'll just say this. I think the factors that have made us the New York Times Wirecutter's Best Medical Alert 2 years in a row is actually all because of my mom. So she really was our senior user experience advisor. And when I try to think of the things that mom did, there's so many she was personally responsible for the first 100 people of the 400 who came through our focus groups when we were doing design. She was the one who taught me. We had a prototype with that e-ink, black on gray, very low power display. Remember the Pebbles?
Oh, yeah.
Basically, it was the Pebble display, and we were doing a focus group with this prototype, and after the whole day gets done, mom pulls me aside and she says, I can't see that. And I'm like, well, no, mom, because you didn't tell me. But of course, like 35% of people above the age of 80, she had macular degeneration. So off we went to Taiwan, got a custom white on black display, maximum contrast, great for people with any kind of visual acuity issues. And we would have not known that without mom. And there's one other thing, there's so many things, but one other really important thing that actually drove the design of the Kanega Watch is that watching my mom and teaching my mom how to use an iPad made me realize that, when you see an older person and they've got their finger and they're just wailing away on an iPad or an iPhone and it's not working, and of course the younger person's thinking, okay, boomer. The reality is actually, as you age, the chemical signals in the hypothalamus that tell you that you're thirsty, they quit working. And so you don't actually realize that you're dehydrated. And if you combine that with any kind of mobility impairment, which often happens, then intentionally you're dehydrated because you don't want to have to get up and go to the restroom. So watching my mom do that, and then actually just going, Mom, lick your fingers and do that again. And she did, and it worked. And it was like, okay, so in a wearable market where everybody's using touch, if you're after my independent but vulnerable population, don't use touch. And that's why we use speech.
That's beautiful. Wow. And it's, you have part of your watch, well, I'll just say my own experience, not with your watch, wearing a wearable and falling. And there was absolutely no detection that I'd fallen, and I'm laying on the floor going, what's going on, right? So talk a little bit about, you have like the technology, the IP that is the best on the market.
Yeah, we are widely acknowledged to be the best fall detection on the wrist anywhere. Having said that, no fall detection is perfect, not ours either. So I just want to make sure that's clear. But we do have Kanega Watch wearers who have a Kanega Watch on one hand and an Apple Watch on the other, because the Apple Watch is, getting their texts, playing with the grandkids, whatever. And the Kanega Watch is there to save their lives. And they do that because it works a little better.
Well, let's talk a little bit about those features, because I read a bunch of them off at the beginning. The things that I tapped in, like you don't have to take it off to charge it. How did you do that?
Yeah, so actually that was the most focus grouped feature, was trying to get the quick swap battery system correct.
Okay.
And so when you look at a Kanega Watch, there's a battery on each side.
Okay.
Okay, we call these a battery pod. You get 4 of these pods, 2 on the watch, 2 on the charger, and you just swap them every day and leave the watch on. So what I was trying to go after, especially in those days, remember Fitbits were brand new, right? And everybody was talking about the Fitbit problem, right? So you wore your Fitbit, you loved it for about 3 months, and then one day you took it off to charge it, and it never came back on, right? And of course, one of the biggest challenges with those medical pendants, besides the ugly stigmatizing form factor, is the fact that most of the time when they're needed, you're not wearing them.
Right.
Because of all those other things. And so 30% adherence if you're wearing a pendant type medical alert is what they've actually studied in the research journals. We have years of data where 86 to 88% of Kanega Watch wearers are wearing their watch every single day, which means we can do what I want. We can save your life.
That's amazing. And I also, when looking in there, is once someone does have an accident and falls, there's something built in that actually helps. Yeah,
so there's a couple of differences. We're kind of skirting around the elephant, so let's talk about the Apple Watch.
Sure.
There's a couple of differences between a Kanega Watch and an Apple Watch, really 3. The first is that a Kanega Watch, you wear it 24/7, right? So we've talked about that already. The second is we have what is widely acknowledged to be the best fall detection in the world on the wrist. And then the third is a really important thing, but it's a little bit subtle unless you actually truly get this, and that is that we're a Class 2 medical device emergency services. What that means is that we go direct to dispatch.
Wow.
We bypass 911. Now, the FDA has rules that say if you have physiological sensors, so like a heart rate or blood oxygen or any of that kind of stuff, then you can't have emergency services unless you're Class 3, which is a really expensive proposition, at least for a startup.
Sure.
And so we, as a Class 2 emergency services device, what that means that we're able to do is if there's an issue, then the medical alarm operator talks to the emergency service responder and says, hey, you're going to see Jean Ann. She has diabetes. She's allergic to aspirin. Oh, and there's a safety key under the planter to the left of the door. Don't break down the door. Can't do that with an Apple Watch.
No, it fits so well into that area of need. I mean, both my parents had passed, but I can just remember, like, Mom, she didn't want that thing around her neck.
Well, and you know, I mean, you can't tell by looking at me, but my mom was a model, right? And so, you know, we actually sat down and had that conversation. I showed her all of the ones that were on the market, and she looks at me and she goes, don't you get that for me? I was like, whoa.
Yes, that's right.
And then I thought about it later, and I'm like, hey, look, you know, I'm an engineer. I'm a nerd's nerd. I wouldn't wear it either. So why would I expect my mom, the model, to wear it?
Right. And you have one on, right?
I do. I have one on here. I wear one every day.
Yeah.
I am actually, our target market is independent but vulnerable populations.
Uh-huh.
So our youngest wearer is 26, I think, and our oldest is 104 and a half. The average age is 80. That's, you know, what you would expect. But I'm actually in our demographic because I'm a cancer survivor. And so falls are very serious for me. And my watch is actually connected to the medical alarm call center.
I love that. So thank you for bringing this to the world. Very necessary. Now you've built companies, you've exited successfully. So what do you think are the critical traits that an entrepreneur needs to do what we do?
You know, I mean, I think it part of it really depends, right? There are different kind of entrepreneurs. There are some people who can start, grow, and exit businesses without a whole lot of passion. I am not one of them. And so for me, it has to be something that I really believe. And especially as my companies, you know, as I've started later companies, it has to be something that I think is going to make a positive difference in the world. And, you know, I'm proud to say with the Kanega Watch, we have 870 people that we know we've saved their lives in less than 4 years. So that's quite awesome.
Yes.
And so, you know, if you have that passion piece, then I think the thing that you have to have, well, in any kind of entrepreneur is the word changes all the time. Tenacity, grit, resilience, I don't know. There's probably another one in there. I just call it stubbornness. And so while on the one hand you sit there and you go, you know, I gotta listen when everybody says, Jean Ann, this is really, you know, it's a great idea, but it's never gonna work. And it's like, okay, I'm gonna take that feedback. I'm gonna test it. They're wrong. I'm doing it. And it's that, in my case, stubbornness that makes it actually happen. If I had $1 for every person who told me that you can't do fall detection on the wrist, I would have never had to raise money.
No, you know, it's amazing because I think that is so true. It's a roller coaster that we ride when we're starting a company, and there's so many opportunities to stop.
Yes.
But being able to go, no, let's just keep going.
And you know, I think one of the things that people miss, you know, when you read like some of the blog posts and stuff, they talk about the depths of despair. You know, you go through this thing where you're, you know, and they act like it only happens once.
Yeah, no.
And that's just wrong.
I would concur with you. So talking about resilience, I have a feeling that there have been a few setbacks along the way as an entrepreneur. Can you talk about maybe one and what you did to overcome it?
UnaliWear, so when we built, right, you know, a 24/7, never remove, voice-controlled, Wi-Fi, cellular, GPS, Bluetooth, all-in-one smartwatch, nobody had ever done what we did.
Sure.
And so getting product market fit was difficult. The first Kanega watch we built was absolutely indestructible. It was medical grade stainless steel. It weighed 1/4 pound. Now, my mom weighed 86 pounds when she passed, but she wore her stainless steel Kanega watch while she gave me her 14-ounce purse to carry. Right? So you can see the product market fit wasn't there. We had the fundamental features,
Right.
but I was just wrong about understanding, how important was it that the watch survive a fall versus that you be able to wear it all the time. So the Kanega watch today is 46 grams. It's super, super light. It looks big because of the batteries, but even with that battery system, it is very, very light. And so making that transition, coming to market, pulling it back off of market, I knew we had things to learn, but raising money to do that second generation was seriously, seriously hard. The economy was in a bad state at that time. My mom passed at that time. 11 days before that, my co-founder's dad passed. It was, just wham, 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 wham.
Right.
And then, I was talking to my best friend, and by the way, your support network is truly important. And my best friend said, the question is, Jean Ann, are you out of paths to go down to get the money to build the second generation Kanega watch? And I'm like, well, no, I could go back to this. I could talk to these people. I could do this. And she goes, you're not done yet. Okay, here we go.
And did you have to design a special chipset for the watch?
No, the semiconductors inside are not special.
Okay, they're small
straight
enough.
off they're straight off the commercial market.
Wow. And just amazing that your semiconductor background experience, I mean, not everybody could simply hey, you brought all that semiconductor knowledge to being able to develop this product. That's just amazing.
Well, that was, and honestly, without making it sound, too much hubris or anything, that was one of the things that when we would run into difficult times and I'd be asking myself, am I wrong? Is everybody else right? It can't be done. And I'd be like, I think it can be done. And here's the challenge. You have to have, people with the combination of knowledge and experience that I and my founding team have to be able to do this. So if it's going to happen, it has to be this special confluence of events and people to make it happen.
Right.
So yeah.
I love that. So long, storied, successful career, still going. What lessons have you learned along the way that would feed to entrepreneurs that are trying to do their first new thing?
I think if you're going to be my kind of entrepreneur, the one who's driven by your passion and your belief, that what you envision is the right thing to do, then, the first question is, does everybody say that you're the most stubborn person they know? Because if they don't, you got to think about whether or not you've got enough passion to overcome the many times you go through the depths of despair. And then the second thing is, to keep in mind when you do go through those times, the question is, are you out of paths to go down? And do you have the grit, the resilience, the tenacity to actually say, I have some more paths that I haven't tapped, and I'm going to go do that now.
Right. No, that's amazing. So your company bridges technology and healthcare.
Yep.
And prioritizes innovation and dignity. I mean, that in itself is amazing. What challenges did you face to bring the product to market? What is it that you have to overcome to say, you've got the awards, but were people listening?
No. So the other thing about my entrepreneurial career is, first of all, I'm always ahead of the market. I think I'm not, but the reality turns out later that I'm always ahead. So there were a lot of challenges and a lot of things that I didn't understand because this was different than the semiconductor marketplace. And so, the first of those is I didn't really understand how difficult it is for somebody to put themselves in the shoes of a future you, right? And so when I'm pitching for money and I'm talking to somebody in their 30s or maybe 40s, they're going, I'll be using an Apple Watch. And the reality is, no, you won't, right? But you think you're special, and you don't actually understand, the challenges of aging that, we all go through. This is a part of the journey of life, right? And so if you're lucky, you get to go through that journey. And so, you just don't really understand that. So because of that, unless people were intimately involved with, some independent but vulnerable populations in their life, then they didn't really get what we were doing. Mm-hmm. And there's one other thing too, and that is, it's kind of a cultural thing that drives a whole lot of other stuff. So the reality of silver tech, right? Products for an aging generation is VCs don't fund it. And I didn't actually look at that. Mm-hmm. I said, hey, look, 70 million people in the U.S. alone above the age of 65, 32 million above the age of 75. And by the way, market penetration is 7%. This is a place to be.
Yeah.
And the reality is the VCs don't fund, I would say, because of the cultural bias that says we believe that old people are the government's problem. So if Medicare doesn't pay for it, I don't get it. Well, now, Medicare doesn't even pay for that pendant around your neck, much less anything that doesn't make you look old and ugly and invalid and all of that. So the challenge becomes actually getting to be able to bring those products to market. And honestly, if you look at the medical alert marketplace, my opinion is the reason it's all still the same since 1987 with the lady in the pink blouse is because those who actually made enough money to survive don't worry about innovators like me because they know those companies will die before they become a challenge in the marketplace.
Wow. And what it is, designing products for that demographic. I think it's amazing. I'm stepping towards that path, but I'm going as slow as I can.
I'm already there. I'm there.
The thing about you, Jean Ann, is you've done so much, and you continue not only with your company, but I've heard so many people say that you have been willing to take the time to mentor them, to really help them understand and answer questions. So I just personally want to thank you for giving back because it's so important.
Well, thank you, but don't thank me, ye who have mentored me before. We don't get here alone.
Yeah, it's a team.
And so when I give that time, and I do every time I can, mm-hmm. I'm just thanking the people who got me here, because boy, did I need help.
Do you mind sharing some of the people that might have gotten you here?
Some of the people who got me here. Laura Kilcrease.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Jimmy Trybig.
Oh, yeah.
You. My best friend Arlene. Jan Ryan, mm-hmm. here in Austin.
Yeah.
Just the more recently, there's a lot of people who have helped because we're in a different part of the journey for UnaliWear. Uh-huh. But I don't want to name them right now because I can't. But but still, it's a culture thing, and it's what I want when I talk to people. You've heard me say this, free advice worth every penny.
Yeah.
Right? And so if it works for you, that's great. And my goal, what I want is I want you to do so much more than I've ever done. And so let me tell you all the stupid things I've done.
in that, we hand out those little magnets like, strong women lift each other up. And it's not just women, it's everybody. If we can help each other, the world is just such a much better place. So thank you for what you do. I always like to end the interviews with a couple of questions. One is, what authentically makes for a successful entrepreneur?
Again, I want to draw that distinction in the types of entrepreneurs. So I'm gonna talk about my type, the driven by passion type. You have to have that tenacity, grit, resilience, stubbornness. You have to have a support network, right? You can't do it alone. You can't. And then, you have to find those things that you believe, and while you're hearing critical feedback and evaluating it, you have to decide whether or not are they right or are they wrong. And in this case, so many people told me, you can't do what you're doing. You can't do fall detection on the wrist. And now look what everybody's doing.
I love that. And then how do you define success as an entrepreneur?
For me, defining success is, first, all of my companies have been investor-backed. So the first goal is to give everybody, the investors, a good return, especially in this company, because remember, VCs don't back Silvertech. I have 197 entities on my cap table, okay? There are a lot of people who made it possible for us to save lives for a living. And so my number one goal is, I want you to do well because you did good. And so that's number one. Number two that goes with it is, for me, what it is that I do has to actually make a difference, right? So we save lives for a living. That's a difference, and that it's a demographic that is usually ignored and shouldn't be, makes it even more valuable to me.
Right. Well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed our time together.
Thank you.
And continued great success.
Thanks.